I want to take some time to, tell you something about optimizing Microsoft 365 environments. When we started this, we saw a lot of potential here because, like Eric tried to explain as well, there's a lot of room for improvements within an M365 environment, and I don't just mean reducing the amount of licenses year over year in your enterprise agreement to be in line with your actual assignments, but I mean more in the line of, am I doing the right thing the right way? There's a lot of items that we identified and are looking at in creating the bill of materials that we do for our clients. And one of the biggest issues that we often see is that there's a one license type idea within an organization. So I'm just buying E5 for everyone because that's the easiest for me to assign to my users. I don't have to make sure that I know which user gets what license. We've done work with a very large IT firm worldwide where we showed them the gaps and the optimizations that they were able to do on their Office 365 environment, and they are managing now to actually assign the correct license type to a specific user by flagging it correctly in their HR department. That saves them a lot of money and also time in the end. So how did we do that? Well, we take some exports from the M365 environment, and we just go through a lot of different steps and items. So we look at the use of services like SharePoint, Exchange, and OneDrive, and we can see we show them if there are any inactive users or users that have not even used some of these services, even though they've assigned an account. And there can be many reasons for why they are not using this. For instance, if you're buying cloud subscriptions to leverage the use of on-premise server environments, for instance, you might not have an active Office 365 license, but you're using it in a different way. However, you can exercise through the results found and see why some users show inactivity or no activity, and why others are showing the correct level of activity. Well, we do that for M365 applications as well, because that is where you get to see if somebody is actually in need of having an Office 365 Pro Plus installation or an M365 application for enterprise license, or if they could use something else like an E1 or even an F3, or it's a service mailbox that just needs an Exchange Online license. You get to distill a lot of information from these reports that you can grab from the Microsoft 365 environment. Other things that we look at are assigned licenses without a need for it. So you tend to just see a lot of people that get, for instance, a Power BI or a project or a Visio license without there being a need for them in their specific level of employment to use any of these licenses. And exercising through this will help you making more sense of your own company as well. So the large worldwide customer we helped found things that they wouldn't have otherwise seen, and they're like, this is interesting, that's funny, maybe we should have a look at it, maybe we should bring in the teams from left, right, and center to help us make sense of this. And that way, you know, with an upcoming renewal, for instance, immediately where you are at, what you can do to optimize, and how you can enter your negotiation. Usually a one-size-fits-all in the Microsoft Cloud world is not what we advise. If you really do want to do it that way because the price is right anyway, and I got the right level of discounts, then we're all for it and we gladly help you. But I always think, and I think that's the license queue philosophy, that diversification on the Microsoft 365 platform is key for a successful contract with Microsoft. Obviously, we'll also look at underutilization of the product list that you have, and in the coming slides, I will go through what this looks like. We will be doing an in-depth session on this, on where to look for, what to look out for, what reports to download, how to tie it together, etc., etc. But will take a lot more time than we currently have. So I just stick to a few examples and hope I get to trigger your interest and you will sign up to the session and we can go into any and all questions that you might have. If you have urgent need and questions right now, feel free to obviously ask them. If something pops up after the session, do reach out. We're always available. Our contact details are freely available on our LinkedIn page, and we'll always be happy to answer any questions you might have. So in activity, if you go into the Microsoft 365 environment and you go to the report section, you get the ability to download a report that will look a little bit like this. And on the left-hand side, there's a few more columns with email address, etc. But obviously that's quite sensitive information, so can't show you that here. But this is what the typical active usage file from Microsoft 365 will look like. And it will tell you first and foremost what type of services are assigned. You see that all the way on the right, assigned products. That is where you will see the entire list of products that are assigned to that specific user. So you see customer logbox, Azure Active Directory, but you will always see Office 365 E3 or F3 or you name it. It's sometimes a very long list. But if we look at on the left-hand side, you also get to see what type of services are activated for that specific user. So if it's assigned an Office 365 E3 license, it has Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams activated as true, but it has Yammer and Skype set to false. So those are services that are not provided to that user. However, we also see cases where an E3 will be assigned, but things like Exchange or OneDrive or even SharePoint will be turned off. So if all those services are turned off, why are you even giving that user an Office 365 E3 license? Will there be a better suited license type that you might assign to that user? And what reason will that be? What's even more interesting is that there's activity dates. So on the 4 columns that you see here, these are active usage data. So this is showing, and I put a filter here just for clarity reasons, that this user has not shown activity in the Office 365 Exchange service as of 03/01/2020. So that currently is more than 1.5 years ago, but when we were doing this, it might have been a little bit shorter than that. What we typically then do is look at, okay, any one of these services that they're using, if there is no active usage for over 90 days in any of these services, can we assume that this is a person that is either not employed anymore, not doing a lot of work in Office 365, maybe on long-term leave or on a sabbatical or at home with a pregnancy? And if so, can we assign that license to someone else? And that way you can just iterate through the data, find all the relevant users that you think might no longer need licenses and get rid of it. And that, what we've seen so far within most organizations, tends to be around 10 to 15% of licenses that we can clean up. You also see a lot of blanks here. You should notice as well that states that any of the services has not been activated for that user. So this is a user that has Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams access, but it's never accessed it. It's a user that was set up on somewhere in 2018 with OneDrive and SharePoint added in 2020. But it's not using any of these services. So again, the question is, why not? And then, can we clean it up? Well, often you might not be able to clean it up, but a lot of the times you will find some optimization potential here. we're always willing to help. So again, if you want to make more sense of this, do reach out to me. I'll be happy to guide you along a little bit. We do the same for Office 365 Pro Plus, as I said, and that will give you a lot of insights into, do I actually need E3 licenses for this this user, or can I use an E1 or an even lower license type? Then when you download within the M365 portal the product list, you will usually get an overview like you see on the right-hand side. All the services that were bought. Total licenses will show you the amount of licenses per service that you have bought, and assigned licenses will show you how much you've given out to users to actually use and consume. Well, we always calculate the delta and don't mind the very large numbers, because usually those are free services. But there's quite a lot of interesting data that we find here. So for instance, this company is buying M365 E3, but it's not using Enterprise Mobility and Security E3. Why not? Was it cheaper to buy the suite? Wasn't it cheaper to buy it without EMS E3? And how can we make sure that if you're already paying for it, that you start actually using it? What are you currently using within EMS that with a different provider? For instance, what are you currently using for mobile device management? Something like Mobile Iron or AirWatch. Maybe you want to move it to Intune because you're already paying for these services. That way you can identify where you can cut cost. And if it's not on the Microsoft side, maybe it will be on the other side, because you're already paying for these licenses. And we think that it's such a waste to have this on the shelf. It might indeed be that it was the cheapest option to buy an M365 E3, but then we would always create a roadmap to see how do we leverage every service within Microsoft 365 to our benefit.